The battlefield was silent now. The war cries had ended, and only the smell of smoke and blood remained. Human warriors stood among the ruins of alien machines, tired but alive. And in the center of it all stood one man, the warrior they called Eric. Eric was not just a soldier. He was a survivor of countless battles. His armor was scratched, his face marked with scars, but his eyes still burned with fire. He had fought against the alien empire for years. And finally, victory was his. But victory in war is never simple. When the alien generals surrendered, they did not come with peace. Instead, they came with gifts, twisted gifts meant to humiliate him. 2 alien slave girls were pushed forward, their hands bound in silver chains. The crowd of humans and aliens watched in silence. The girls were young, beautiful, and fragile. Their skin carried strange patterns of their people, glowing faintly in the dark. One had eyes like burning gold, the other eyes like a deep ocean. They bowed their heads, forced into obedience. "This is our offering," the alien general said. "To honor the human warrior who crushed our armies, we give him treasures of flesh and loyalty." Eric's jaw tightened. He hated this. He had not fought to own slaves. He fought for freedom for his people, for humanity. But he also knew that refusing the gift would be dangerous. The aliens were watching, testing his response, and his soldiers stood behind him, waiting to see what he would do. He accepted them, but his voice was cold. "Take them to my quarters," he said. Inside, his mind boiled with anger. The girls were silent as they followed him. Their steps were small, their chains rattling like whispers in the night. When the door closed, Eric turned to them. "I do not want slaves," he said, his voice sharp but not cruel. "You are free to speak here. No one will harm you." For the first time, the girls lifted their eyes. The golden-eyed girl spoke softly. "You may not want slaves, but they will never let us go." Her voice trembled, but beneath it was strength. "They gave us to you because they fear what we know," Eric frowned. "What do you mean?" The ocean-eyed girl stepped forward, her chains clinking. "We are not ordinary slaves," she whispered. "We were once daughters of a fallen house, heirs to a world destroyed by this empire." Her words were heavy, filled with sorrow. "They fear us, because our blood carries secrets that could end them." Eric felt a chill run through him. He had thought the girls were victims, but now he realized they were also keys to something far greater than he imagined. Outside, the camp was alive with laughter. Human soldiers celebrated the victory, unaware of the danger still lurking. The empire was not defeated, it was wounded. And wounded beasts are always the most dangerous. Inside the tent, Eric studied the girls. He saw fear in them, but also courage. They had suffered chains, humiliation, and loss, yet their eyes still held fire. In that moment, Eric made a silent vow. He would protect them, not as slaves, but as allies. The night grew darker. Eric sat with his sword resting across his knees. The golden-eyed girl spoke again, her voice quiet. "They will come for us. Soon." Eric's hand tightened on the blade. "Let them come," he said. His words were calm, but his heart was already preparing for the storm. Because deep inside, he knew this was not the end of the war. This was only the beginning, and the fate of 2 alien girls might decide the fate of all humanity. The chains rattled once more, but this time, Eric did not hear the sound of slavery. He heard the sound of destiny. The night passed slowly. Eric did not sleep. He sat by the small fire inside his tent, sharpening his blade while the 2 alien girls rested on the ground. Their chains coiled around their wrists like snakes. The camp outside was loud with songs and drunken laughter, but inside, silence ruled. When the first light of dawn touched the sky, the golden-eyed girl finally spoke again. "My name is Syria," she said, her voice calm yet heavy. She looked at Eric with eyes that burned like fire. The ocean-eyed girl lifted her head too. "And I am Lyra," she whispered, her voice softer, like the sea before a storm. Eric nodded slowly. He repeated their names in his mind, committing them to memory. No longer would he think of them as slaves. They were people, and their names carried weight. "Tell me what you meant last night," Eric said, his tone firm. "You said you were daughters of a fallen house, and that the Empire fears you. Why?" The two girls exchanged a look. Lyra's hands trembled as she touched the chain around her wrist. "It is because of our blood," she whispered. "Our family ruled the world of Illyria long ago, before the Empire came, before they burned our cities, before they enslaved our people." Syria's voice grew sharper. "They tried to erase our line, but they failed. We survived in secret, hidden among the slaves, waiting for the right moment. The Empire gave us to you not as an honor, but as a trap. If we die in your hands, they are free of their fear. If we live, they will hunt us." Eric's brow tightened. So this was the truth. Two girls carrying the legacy of a fallen kingdom. He realized now why their eyes carried such strength, why the Empire looked at them with hatred. "You should not have told me this," Eric muttered. "It puts my men, and me, in danger." Syria's lips curved in a bitter smile. "You were already in danger, warrior, the moment you defeated their armies. You painted a target on your back. The Empire will never forgive you. They will come, not just for us, but for you." Eric looked down at his sword. He had always known that victory was never final. War was like fire. It spread, it consumed. It grew until nothing was left, but something inside him shifted. He had fought for humans, for Earth, for survival. Now standing before him were two reasons to fight for something greater, not just survival, but justice. The day wore on. Eric tried to keep his focus, but whispers ran through the camp. Some of his men had seen the alien girls, and curiosity spread like smoke. Soldiers asked questions. Who were they? Why were they given? What was their value? Eric gave no answers, only commands. "Leave them be," he said coldly, and his men obeyed, though not without suspicion. That evening, Syria leaned closer to him, her chains clinking softly. "You should know the truth of us," she said. She raised her hand and pressed it to the skin near her collarbone. The glowing marks across her skin brightened, patterns of light like stars spreading along her arm. Lyra mirrored her, her ocean blue glow shimmering like waves. Eric stared, his eyes narrowing. "What is this?" "It is the mark of Illyria," Lyra explained. "It is in our blood, a bond with the old technology of our world. The Empire cannot destroy it, and they cannot control it. Only those of royal blood carry this light, and with it comes the key to the old machines, the weapons they fear." Eric's grip on his sword tightened. This was bigger than he imagined. If these girls truly held the key to lost weapons, then the Empire would stop at nothing, and if word spread, humans too might try to use them. The night deepened again. A cold wind swept through the camp, and the fire flickered. Eric stood, walking to the tent's entrance, scanning the shadows. He could feel it, the weight of eyes watching from the dark. The Empire would not wait long behind him. Syria whispered. "You do not trust us." Eric turned slightly, his scarred face lit by the glow of the fire. "I do not trust anyone, not in war," he said, his voice steady. "But I will protect you, not because of your blood, not because of your light, but because I choose to." The two sisters looked at him, their chains rattling softly as they shifted. For the first time, hope flickered in their eyes. Outside, in the distance, a shadow moved through the trees, silent, patient, watching. The Empire had already sent its hunters, and Eric knew, deep in his bones, that the true war was about to begin. The hunters came at night. Eric had expected it. Though he did not tell the sisters, he sat awake with his sword laid across his knees, listening to the sounds of the camp. The laughter of his soldiers faded into snores. The crackling of the fires grew softer, and then silence, a silence too heavy, too sharp. The first shadow moved through the grass outside. Eric's hand gripped the hilt of his blade, his eyes narrowing. The alien assassins were silent and fast, their bodies covered in black armor that blended with the night. But Eric had lived too long on the battlefield to be fooled by silence. When the tent flap shifted, he struck, steel flashed, and blood spilled on the sand. Syria and Lyra woke with a gasp, their chains rattling. Eric pulled the dead assassin inside and hissed, "They are here." The girl's eyes glowed faintly in fear. Before they could speak, more shadows struck. The tent was torn open by blades of alien steel, and 3 assassins lunged forward. Eric met them head-on, his sword clashing with their curved weapons. Sparks flying in the dark, the fight was fast and brutal. Eric moved like a storm, every strike fueled by years of war. But he was only one man, and the assassins were trained killers. One blade cut across his arm, another slammed against his chest plate. He staggered, blood dripping, yet he did not fall. Eric. Lyra cried, her voice trembling but filled with courage. She raised her chained hands and pressed them together. Her skin began to glow, the blue light spreading across her body. The assassins hesitated for a moment, startled by the sudden illumination. That single moment was enough. Eric roared and drove his sword through the chest of one, then spun to cut another down. Saria's golden glow joined her sister's, the marks on her skin burning bright like fire. The assassins froze, fear flickering in their alien eyes. They recognized the royal bloodline of Illyria. They whispered a single word in their tongue. Heirs. Before Eric silenced them with steel. When the fight ended, the ground was painted red. Eric stood panting, his blade dripping blood, his body aching. The sisters stared at him, their light slowly fading. You should have let us die, Syria said bitterly, her voice shaking. Now the Empire knows we live. They will never stop hunting. Eric wiped his sword clean and shook his head. I have never let fear decide my path, he said, his voice rough but steady. Let them come. I will kill every hunter they send. The camp stirred with noise. His soldiers running toward the tent. They saw the corpses, the glowing marks fading on the girl's skin, and their faces turned pale. Commander, one soldier said carefully, what are they? Eric's eyes hardened. They are under my protection, he declared. Anyone who touches them answers to me. The men nodded, though unease lingered in their eyes. Whispers spread through the camp like fire through dry grass. Some soldiers feared the girls, others envied them. Some even thought of betraying them for a price. That night, Eric realized a truth. It was not only the Empire that was a danger. Greed and fear among his own men could prove deadlier. He had to act before the whispers grew into knives in the dark. The next morning, he took Syria and Lyra beyond the camp. Away from prying eyes, they walked into the ruins of an old alien fortress, its stones broken and overgrown. The air smelled of dust and forgotten wars. This place, Syria whispered, it belonged to our people. They placed their glowing hands on the cracked walls. The ruins responded, light spreading across the stone, revealing hidden symbols. Old machines hummed awake, ancient technology responding to their bloodline. Eric stepped back, stunned. He had seen many wonders in war, but nothing like this. This was power, real power, the kind that could change the balance of the galaxy. Syria looked at him, her golden eyes steady. Now you see why they fear us, she said. With us, the old weapons can rise again. With us, rebellion is possible. Eric's heart pounded. He had fought to survive, to protect his people, but never to lead revolutions. Yet now destiny pressed heavy on his shoulders. If he stood with these girls, he would not only fight for humans, he would fight for a galaxy chained in slavery. He looked at them both, his voice low but fierce. If we do this, if we stand against them, there is no turning back. Lyra's eyes filled with determination, her soft voice unshaken. We have lived our whole lives in chains, Eric. We will not run anymore. The wind howled through the ruins like a ghostly song. Eric tightened his grip on his sword and made his choice. The whispers of rebellion had begun, and soon the galaxy would hear them roar. The ruins glowed faintly long after the sisters had touched the stone. Eric stood in silence, his mind racing. The truth was undeniable now. These two alien girls were not gifts. They were weapons, not of flesh, but of destiny. And if the Empire feared them, then it meant one thing: war would return. Darker and sharper than before. When they returned to the camp, whispers followed them like shadows. Soldiers watched the sisters with hungry eyes, some filled with fear, others with greed. They had seen the glow, They had seen the strange ruins light up, and rumors twisted faster than wildfire. By nightfall, stories spread. Some called the sisters witches. Others claimed they were cursed queens. But one word appeared again and again, whispered with awe and dread. Power. Eric felt the shift in the air. Victory had made his men proud, but fear was breaking that pride apart. And fear always bred betrayal. That night, when the campfire burned low and the stars shone cold above, betrayal came. It started with the sound of footsteps. Too many for a patrol. Eric had been sharpening his blade again, his instincts too sharp to rest. When the tent flap moved, he was already standing. 4 of his own soldiers stepped inside, their faces hard, their hands gripping weapons. Behind them, 2 more dragged Syria and Lyra forward, their chains clattering as they struggled. Eric's eyes narrowed, his voice like steel. "What are you doing?" The lead soldier spat on the ground. "You protect them like treasures, but we know the truth. They are dangerous, Commander. They will bring the Empire down on us again. Better we kill them now, and sell their corpses to the highest bidder." Lyra's face went pale. Syria's eyes burned with fury. Eric's hand tightened on his sword. "Release them," he said coldly. "No," the soldier sneered. "Stand aside, Commander. This is for the good of all." For a moment, silence cut through the tent like a blade. The men shifted nervously under Eric's glare. But greed made them bold, and then they moved. Steel clashed. The tent filled with firelight and fury. Eric struck like thunder, his sword cutting through one traitor before the others could react. The sisters ducked low, chains rattling, their eyes glowing faintly as panic filled them. The fight was short, brutal and bloody. When it ended, 4 men lay broken on the ground, their blood staining the earth. Eric stood panting, his chest heaving. The sisters stared at him, their eyes wide. "You killed your own men," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. Eric wiped his blade clean, his expression hard. "They stopped being my men the moment they raised their weapons against you." The rest of the camp stirred. Drawn by the noise, more soldiers gathered outside, their eyes wide as they saw the bodies. Some looked at Eric with loyalty, others with doubt. Whispers began again, sharper this time. "Commander killed his own. He protects the slaves more than us. He has chosen them over humanity." Eric knew the danger. If fear spread too far, his command would collapse. But before he could speak, Syria stepped forward, chains rattling as she lifted her chin, her golden eyes blazing. "Do you not see?" she shouted, her voice cutting through the crowd like fire. "The Empire fears us. That is why they sent hunters. That is why they sent assassins, and now you fear us too. But ask yourself, who stood between us and death tonight? Who killed your traitors when they turned their blades against him? This man, this human warrior, he is not our master. He is our shield." The crowd shifted uneasily. Some lowered their heads, shamed, others muttered still. But the fire in Syria's words left them unsettled. Eric glanced at her, surprised. The girl who had once spoken with bitterness now stood with a voice of command. The blood of Illyria ran strong in her veins. That night, the camp did not sleep well. The bodies were buried in silence, the soldiers restless, their trust fractured. Eric sat apart, sharpening his blade again, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The sisters sat close to each other, whispering quietly in their own tongue, their faces pale but determined. Before dawn, a messenger arrived, riding hard through the dark. He carried a blade marked with the seal of the Empire. His voice trembled as he delivered the words. "The Empire knows the heirs live. They demand their return. If you refuse, they will burn this camp to ash. They are coming with fire and fleets." The camp fell into silence, the threat heavy as stone. Eric stood slowly, his sword in hand, his eyes blazing with fury. "They want us to bow," he said, his voice like thunder. "Then we will rise instead." Syria and Lyra exchanged a glance, their fear clear, but their resolve stronger. The rebellion had already begun, and there was no turning back. The camp did not last long after the messenger's warning. Fear spread faster than fire. Some soldiers abandoned their posts in the night. taking what they could carry. Others whispered of surrender, of handing the sisters back to the Empire to save their own lives. Eric knew the camp would not hold, not against an Empire fleet. He made his choice quickly, before dawn. He gathered a handful of loyal men, those who still trusted him, those who did not fear the sisters' light. Among them were hardened veterans, men who had followed Eric through countless battles, their loyalty bound not by orders but by respect. With them, he led Syria and Lyra away from the camp. Into the wilderness, the Empire's shadow loomed behind them. Fleets moving through the stars, scouts searching the land. Eric chose the path no sane man would take, the ruins of Illyria, a dead world said to be haunted by ghosts of the past. The sisters guided the way, their blood calling to the stones, through forests of twisted trees, across deserts of glass where old battles had burned the earth, until finally the ruins rose before them. The lost city stretched wide, broken towers piercing the sky, streets choked with dust. Statues of kings and queens long turned to shadows. But when Syria and Lyra stepped onto the cracked stones, the city stirred, the ground trembled faintly. Light spread through the streets like rivers of fire. The ruins were not dead. They were sleeping, waiting for heirs to return. Eric's men stared in awe, their fear forgotten for a moment. The sisters walked forward, their glowing hands brushing against broken walls, awakening old machines. Gates of metal opened where stone had once stood. Ancient weapons rose from beneath the earth, like giants awakening from slumber. Eric followed, his sword at his side, his heart heavy. This was more than he had expected. The Empire had reason to fear. If the sisters could awaken an entire city, then they held the key to a weapon greater than any fleet. That night, they made camp in the shadow of a broken palace. The sisters sat together, their eyes glowing softly as they spoke of their people. Illyria was once the heart of light, Lyra said, her voice filled with sorrow. Our people built wonders, but pride blinded us when the Empire came. We thought we could resist, but they shattered our world. They turned our blood into chains. Syria clenched her fists, her golden glow pulsing brighter. We are the last of our house. If we fall, Illyria's light is gone forever. Eric listened in silence. He was no king, no heir, only a soldier. Yet he felt the weight of their words settle on his shoulders. He had fought for survival his whole life, but now destiny pulled him toward something greater. As the fire burned low, one of his men approached. "Commander," the soldier whispered, "we should not stay here. The Empire will come, and this place." "It feels alive," Eric met his gaze, his voice steady. "That is why we must stay. If the Empire fears this place, then it is the only place strong enough to stand against them." The soldier hesitated, then nodded, trust winning over fear. Before dawn, the city answered the sisters' call again. Massive doors in the palace opened, revealing a chamber of glowing stone and crystal. The air hummed with energy, the walls alive with symbols. At the center stood a throne not of gold, but of light. When Syria touched it, the room blazed with fire. Visions filled the air, images of fleets burning, of empires falling, of Illyria rising. The men fell to their knees. Stunned, Eric stood firm, his hand on his sword. This was no dream, it was a warning. The Empire would not stop until this light was destroyed. The sisters turned to him, their faces pale but their eyes fierce. "You see now," Syria said. "We cannot run, we must fight, and you must lead us." Eric shook his head. "I am no king," he said, his voice rough. "You do not need a king," Lyra replied softly. "You need a warrior, someone who will stand when others bow." The chamber fell silent, the weight of their words pressing against him. Outside, thunder rumbled, not from the sky, but from engines. The Empire's fleet had arrived, their ships cutting through the clouds. Fire and steel descending. Eric drew his blade, the steel shining in the strange light of the chamber. His men looked to him. The sisters stood behind him, their glow burning brighter than ever. For the first time, he felt not like a survivor, but like the point of a spear, sharp, unyielding, destined to strike. The lost city of Illyria had awakened. And with it, so had rebellion. The sky split open with fire. Empire ships descended like dark clouds, their engines screaming, their shadows drowning the ruins of Illyria from the broken towers. Eric and his men watched as the fleet spread across the horizon. Dozens of warships, each armed with cannons that could level mountains, each carrying soldiers ready to kill. The men trembled, their courage fading under the sight of such power. Even the bravest clenched their fists in fear. "This is madness," one muttered. "We cannot fight them, not with swords, not with old ruins." Eric stood at the front, his scarred face lit by the glow of the sisters. His voice carried across the ruins, sharp as steel. "You are wrong. We can fight. And we will fight, not for survival, but for freedom. You have seen what the sisters carry. You have seen this city wake. The Empire is not invincible. They bleed like we bleed. And today we show them that humanity does not kneel." The words struck deep. The men straightened. Some fear burned away by his fire. Behind him, Syria raised her glowing hand, golden light streaming through the ruins. Ancient machines stirred, rising from beneath the earth like sleeping giants. Statues moved, not of stone but of armored guardians, their eyes burning with Illyrian fire. Lyra placed her hands on a broken console, blue light spreading like water through the ruins. Walls hummed, shields of energy rose around the city, faint but strong. For the first time, the men saw hope, a shield against the Empire's fire. The first strike came. The sky blazed as cannons fired, beams of light tearing through the air. The shield flared, rippling like water, holding strong. The ruins shook. Dust rained from the towers, but the city stood. Cheers erupted, short and fierce. Eric lifted his sword. "Now we fight," he roared. The Empire's soldiers descended, black dropships cutting through the air, landing outside the shield. From their hulls poured waves of armored troops, their banners marked with the Empire's crest. Drums of war thundered across the battlefield. Eric's men took their positions. Archers with alien-forged bows lined the walls. Bladesmen guarded the gates, scavenged rifles aimed from the towers. They were few, barely 100 against thousands, but the ruins were alive, and the sisters' power made them more than men. The first wave struck. Empire soldiers crashed against the gates, their weapons slamming into the shields. Eric met them head-on, his blade flashing, his roar carrying above the clash of steel. Every strike he made was a promise that humanity would not break. Syria and Lyra stood high in the palace, their hands raised, guiding the old machines. Golden fire rained from the statues. Blue light pulsed through the walls. Striking the enemy, the Empire faltered for a moment, not expecting resistance this fierce. But the Empire did not retreat. Their generals ordered more. Wave after wave, each stronger than the last. The ground shook as siege walkers marched forward, massive machines with cannons that spat fire. The shield cracked, flickering under the assault. Lyra fell to her knees, her breath heavy. "I cannot hold it much longer," she gasped. Syria knelt beside her, pressing her glowing hands against her sisters. "Then we hold it together. We are Illyria. We are not chains. We are fire." The shield flared brighter, their combined strength holding back the storm. Eric saw their struggle, his fury rising. He cut down another soldier, his armor dripping blood. Then he raised his sword high, his voice echoing across the ruins. "Humans, Illyrians, stand as one. Fight not as slaves, not as survivors, but as warriors. Today we show them we will not bow." The men roared, their voices joining his. Their fear burned away in the heat of battle. Even defectors, aliens who had once served the Empire, but now saw a chance of freedom, joined the fight, their weapons turning against their masters. The battlefield became chaos, blood and fire mixing with hope from the fleet above. A massive ship descended, larger than the rest, its cannons glowing with the fire of annihilation. It was the flagship, the heart of the Empire's might. If it fired, the ruins would be reduced to ash, shield or no shield. Syria's eyes widened as she saw it, her voice trembling but fierce. "Eric, that ship carries the general who destroyed Illyria. If he falls, the fleet will break. Eric looked to the sky, his grip on the sword tightening. Destiny had brought him here, not just to protect, but to strike. He turned to his men, his voice steady. Hold the city, no matter the cost. The sisters and I will take the fight to the sky. The men stared, stunned. To the sky? How? One asked. Eric looked back at the glowing ruins. The machines rising, the old technology waiting. We do not fight alone anymore, he said. Behind him, the palace opened, revealing a colossal war machine of Illyria. A vessel of light and steel, long buried, now awakened. The sisters stepped forward, their glow merging with the machine. Eric followed, his sword in hand, his heart ready. The fight was no longer survival. It was destiny. The sky blazed with fire, and Eric rose to meet it. The Illyrian war machine rose from the ruins like a beast of light. Its hull shimmered with golden fire and blue waves. Powered by the blood of Syria and Lyra, Eric stood at its heart, his hands gripping controls that felt alive, pulsing with strange energy. He was a soldier, not a pilot. Yet the machine seemed to know him, guiding his movements, shaping his will into power. The sky roared as the Empire's flagship descended. It was vast, its shadow swallowing the ruins, its cannons glowing with fire that could turn cities to dust. At its helm stood the general who had destroyed Illyria, the butcher of worlds, his voice echoing across the coms. You dare resist the Empire, human? You dare awaken what was buried? Eric's reply was steady, his voice like iron. I do not resist. I fight. For humanity, for Illyria, for freedom. The first strike came. The flagship unleashed its fury. Beams of fire tearing through the sky. Eric moved the war machine. Golden shields flaring as the blast struck, shaking the vessel but not breaking it. The sisters cried out, their glowing eyes burning brighter, their strength pouring into the machine. Hold, Eric, Syria shouted. We are with you. Eric gritted his teeth, forcing the war machine forward. The vessel surged through the fire, its weapons awakening. Blue lances of light shot from its arms, ripping through smaller Empire ships, sending them falling in flames. The battlefield below erupted in cheers as the ruins of Illyria lit the sky with defiance. But the flagship was relentless. Its cannons fired again and again, pounding against the shields, each hit shaking the sisters. Draining their strength, Lyra stumbled, her breath shallow. I cannot. Much longer, she whispered. Syria caught her, pressing her hand against hers, their glow merging into a storm of light. Together, always, she said fiercely. The flagship opened its main cannon, a massive core of energy glowing like a sun. One strike would end it all. Eric felt the weight of the moment, death staring him in the face, but inside him burned a fire no empire could extinguish. He raised the war machine's blade, a colossal weapon forged of light. The sisters poured their last strength into him. The vessel screaming as power surged, Eric roared, his voice carrying across the stars. For humanity, for Illyria, for freedom, the war machine charged, cutting through fire, cutting through fear. The flagship unleashed its cannon, a beam of destruction ripping the sky. But Eric's strike met it head-on, golden light clashing with Empire fire, the heavens exploding in thunder. For a heartbeat, the world held still. Then the flagship cracked, its armor splitting, its engines failing. The blade of Illyria tore through its core, and the general's scream echoed as his ship erupted in a storm of fire. The fleet wavered, broken, their leader destroyed, their courage shattered. One by one, they turned and fled, vanishing into the stars. The battlefield below roared with victory. Humans and alien defectors lifted their weapons high, their voices carrying in triumph. The ruins of Illyria burned with light, not of destruction, but of hope, inside the war machine. Eric fell to his knees, exhausted, his hands trembling. The sisters collapsed beside him, their glow fading, but their eyes alive. We did it, Lyra whispered weakly. Yes, Syria said, her voice fierce even in exhaustion. But this is only the beginning. Eric looked out over the battlefield, the ruined city, the stars beyond. The Empire had been wounded, but not destroyed. More fleets would come, more battles would rise, but for the first time in his life, he did not feel like just a soldier. He felt like a leader. He placed a hand on the sister's shoulders, his voice steady. Then we will be ready, whatever comes. We face it together. The dawn broke, painting the ruins in golden light. Chains lay broken, fires burned low, and a new story began. The story of a warrior, 2 heirs, and a rebellion that would shake the stars. The Empire had ruled for centuries with fear, but now, the galaxy had seen something stronger, hope.